Hello everyone and welcome to the next episode of Art Side of Life, where I chat with inspiring artists 5 days a week. My name is Eva and my guest today is Denis Zilber, and you will learn why he returned to art after 10 years break and how he approached study of color and light.
I approached it from the way of physics. I just studied what is light, how different lighting conditions affect different objects, and how different objects diffuse light, and how light, depending on its wavelength, how it's being dispersed by the atmosphere.
Denis is a freelance illustrator and visual storyteller with more than 8 years of professional experience, and he has worked with major magazines like GQ, Maxim, National Geographic, and animation studios like Hasbro, Dreamworks, Nickelodeon, among many others. Denis is also teaching and giving lectures about illustration and storytelling all around the world. So please welcome Denis Zilber, and let's get to the interview. Welcome everyone to the next episode of Art Side of Life, and I'm super happy here. So I have my guest here, Denis. Hi!
Hi!
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Perfect. Then let's start with your background and maybe some stories from your childhood. What were kind of the creative outlets, what you had as a kid?
I was raised in an artistic family. My both parents are artists, professional artists. It seems like an advantage, in artistic career. But it wasn't such an advantage, because my parents, they didn't teach me anything. They just kind of gave me some taste to art. They just showed me what is good and what is bad. Mm-hmm. Of course, but in their point of view, and that is all. So I had to learn everything by myself. So the only advantage that I had, in that matter, I had a lot of artistic materials in my home and a lot of artistic books. Basically, those were like when I was really, really young, little kid, when I could only crawl before I could walk. I could reach only for the first book, first shelf of the book, and the first one was stuffed with artistic albums and artistic books, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, and Japanese art, and so on. So I couldn't read, but I could read. I could open those books and read them and see them. Yeah. So these were my first books, and probably that was my probably the greatest influence, the greatest push for me to become an artist. And of course, my parents, my father, that I just worshipped him all of my life, and I wanted to be like my dad. So I had no, since I was a kid, I had no other career in mind except for being an artist. So I had no choice. I had no choice. Like I was sentenced. I was meant to be an artist, and now nobody taught me, actually. Nobody taught me. I just had to be an artist, because, the family heritage, I have to be an artist.
Also, so your parents also expected you to be artist.
Yeah. They expected me. Yeah, they thought that I was so talented since I was like 5 years old, and I was talented. Yeah, but because of the fact that they thought that I was talented, that I was gifted initially, that I was born with that, they never taught me anything. They never showed me anything. So I was kind of, I was raised in an artistic family, and I had no artistic education, no proper artistic education. So I had to learn everything by myself. For example, anatomy, I learned from ancient Greek, red-figured vases, and so on. So I just look at them on those images and try to understand how it's built, all the muscles and so on. So I had my, there were some pluses and minuses as well.
Mm-hmm. And did you have like favorite books as well when you said like you were studying from, or do you have like favorite books now you would recommend?
Books, reading book, that you read.
Like
Now,
artistic books.
artistic books. Well, I'm a huge fan of J.C. Landecker.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like kind of idol for me. I don't have many idols, but for me, I would recommend if someone wants to learn illustration or understand at least what is good illustration and what is it what is it to be an iconic illustrator. I would recommend to buy a book of his works, because for me it's each year I look at his work and I think, oh, okay, I'm not there yet. No, probably I won't be there in my life. But he was amazing. He was amazing. Yeah. So that frankly, I when I used to teach, I used to recommend it to all of my students, and for some of my students, I even gave them this, like I even bought myself the book and send it to them, just to give them inspiration and to support them.
Yeah. And which were kind of the biggest turning points or like decision points you had to do in order to get where you are now? Because you also moved and like adjusting to new culture and all of that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've made a huge mistake. The probably the biggest mistake of my life when we moved to Israel when I was 15 years old. Mm-hmm. At the age of 16. I decided that I have nothing to do with art anymore, that I can't make a living of it, and nobody needs it. Nobody needs my art. Nobody needs my drawing. So I stopped completely doing art drawing for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
For 10 years. I lost 10 years of my life doing anything but art. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And but finally, luckily enough, I went back to drawing and to painting, to creating art when I was 26, mm-hmm. And that was the huge moment of my life, because when I realized that I have something in my hand, I have some gift probably, yeah, maybe it's not huge big gift, but it's slightly bigger than other people have. So probably I should use it. Probably I should
work on it.
Work on it, develop it just a little bit. Maybe it will help me. Maybe I will make some living of it, or maybe I don't know. And I just went back like I woke up after 10 years, and I regret of these 10 years gap. Mm-hmm. So enormously and almost every day. But I can do nothing about that right now, but so that was my turning point.
Yeah. And then when you also started to study by yourself, and how was the transition between like when you felt like, okay, now I can take some first jobs, and what was the first job maybe you had?
My first job. Well, I used to work as back then when I was 26. I used to work in some studio. There's some design studio. I was a graphic designer, mm-hmm. So I did some flash animations and flash banners and advertising and so on. So that type of work. And I started to. I used to work in the studio, so I started to when I was going back home, mm-hmm. I was opening my computer. I was turning on my computer, opening Photoshop or opening any Painter, 3D packages like Maya and so on. And I started to study till the morning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And every for a year or two, that was my routine. I was studying every night, and studying drawing, painting, modeling, animating, everything. I didn't know, but back then I wasted a lot of time, wasted a lot of effort on learning different things. But eventually I realized that I need to draw, and I need to illustrate. So eventually I started to draw more, and I started to publish it on my blog on internet, and my first illustration job was for some Russian newspaper. They approached me and they paid me like $50 or something for some article about sports or something, and it was nice. It was a nice job. But after that, pretty soon, I don't know how, but Russian GQ magazine, which is GQ, is quite a respectable magazine, but Russian edition, not the original British one. They approached me, and I worked with them for like 3 years. 3 years, very. Every 2 weeks, I had to give them one illustration for one article, and that was my playground. I studied. I learned so much from that cooperation, because they allowed me to do anything. They loved everything that I did. It's amazing. And back then I knew nothing. I was so bad at illustration, but they loved it. So I tried new styles, new approaches. I tried new techniques. Each time sometimes I even sent them 2 or 3 versions of the same illustration, with different techniques, and they loved everything. It was amazing. 3 years, and they paid me for that. They paid me. I learned illustration, during my work, and they paid me for that.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's easy. It's amazing. It was a dream job for me, back then.
And what about now? What are the projects you are working on now? Something exciting coming up with you can share now?
Well, I'm waiting to start some new project, which is some advertising illustration for New York-based advertising agency, and they kind of build the whole project around my style. They knew the guys, the art directors of that agency. They knew me before. They knew me from somewhere. I don't know how they knew me, but they approached me and they told me that they've built the whole project around my style. So it fits my style perfectly, and it's about crazy characters with a lot of personality, with a lot of detail, and in my style. Wow, that's also a dream job for me. And it's about I believe it's 5 or 7 illustrations. 5 or not just illustrations, huge posters, advertising posters for a big company, and I'm just anticipating for their they were about to contact me like two days ago, so it's about to start any day now.
Nice. And how would you describe your your art style, or as you mentioned it now, and kind of what are your main inspirations, which always kind of goes into your art, and something also what you see coming through your art, like vision or.
Well, first of all, it's all about storytelling. It's all about storytelling, less about technique, because sometimes I even sometimes people approach me because of my technique, because I can render things like more or less realistically, and they call it Pixar style, which I personally personally hate, because I never try to be, to mimic Pixar or Disney or whatever. But I do love to create, well rendered illustrations, which is I don't see it as an advantage. So sometimes I feel that I could do it. I could achieve the same goal. I don't think that well rendered illustration is an advantage, because I think that I could achieve the same goal with less render, with more simple style. And that is actually my kind of something that I'm working on right now. I'm trying to change my style. I'm trying to be less, less beautiful image, less beautiful, beautiful rendering, and more storytelling. So storytelling is the first, my first goal, and then expressive image. And to achieve that expression, I use, of course, slightly cartoonish images, slightly cartoonish characters, and I also personally love expressive colors and light. Yeah. So that is almost always in my work somehow, in some way. I just can, if there is no good color, there is no expressive, vivid color, I just feel it's boring. So probably kind of childish approach, but still, it is almost always presented in my work. So first of all, storytelling, expression, color, light, and that is.
And when you were working on your art style and developing and learning, what was maybe the best advice you ever received, also the worst advice?
Okay, my worst advice. It wasn't even an advice. When I was 8 years old, I used to go to art school, and my art teacher, he was also principal of that art school, and by the way, he's at the same position right now. He's alive, and he's still at the same school for like 30 years later. He's still in the same position. He told me that I have no feeling of color. Nice. He told me that you don't feel color. You just can't do it. You need to work. You need to stick to black and white. Only graphic, and only drawing and so on, and then pencil ink and so on. So color is not yours. It's not your cup of tea. And probably that was the kind of I was so sad when he told me that. I went to my parents, and my parents told me, no, he's not right. He's stupid. Don't pay attention and so on. So probably that was kind of that was the worst advice. But probably that gave me that antagonistic push to prove him wrong. Because I right now I can tell him, you just can't go to hell with your advice, because
I can do it now.
I can do it now. I was 8 years old back then, and I still remember that advice.
Oh, that's not. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was the worst advice, and eventually it was kind of good for me, because I used it somehow. I don't know, probably in my subconscious somewhere. I just used it because it always bugged me. I always wanted to show people that I know what color is. That I feel color.
And so how did you approach learning about color? Did you study outdoor settings, or did you have online courses, or where did you learn from?
I studied by myself. I approached it from the way of physics. I just studied, what is light, what is how different lighting conditions affect different objects, and how different objects diffuse light, and how light, depending on its wavelength, how it's being dispersed by the atmosphere and so on. So I know all that. Stuff. I went deep to the level of atoms and so on. Formulas and so on.
Yeah.
So I understand how it works.
Yeah.
I understand actually how it works, in terms of optics and physics. That's kind of a probably weird approach, and probably not so artistic one. One of my students kind of left me at that point of the course. I used to teach illustration and painting. So one of my students told me, like, she was so she was outraged, like, oh, it's the math, it's math, it's mathematics, it's not art. And she left me because she thought that it should be more more intuitive,
just like
and
feelings
more
and whatever.
feelings and so on. I told her, no, actually, we have that overall diffuse lighting in the scene, so it affects this object that way, and the bouncing light and so on. So I understand light from the perspective of science. Sometimes, by the way, I try to ignore it. I try to ignore my knowledge, because for the sake of to achieve more expressive color, or more expressive visual, I just ignore something that I know, because I know that this shadow is not right, or this bouncing light is not right. I know it, but I accept it because I need it right now that way.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be always realistic, but believable.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
To some level.
But it's good to know.
Definitely.
Because that way I don't need to look at the object. I just I can draw and paint anything from imagination, just only if I know the properties of that material, of that object, and all the rest I have a rendering machine in my brain, so you just tell me what this object should do, and where it should be placed, and I'll paint everything. I don't need even the references. I just paint from imagination. So it's for an illustrator, it simplifies things a lot.
Yeah. And do you have like a favorite tools you use now, like a favorite pen or pencil or a digital?
No, I work digitally. I'm a lazy one. Yeah, because it's a huge problem, because I used to draw a lot with ink back then. When I thought that is my faith. To
draw again.
to draw with black and white. But nowadays I just work digitally. So Photoshop and Intuos, vacuum Intuos, and so on, and that is all.
So you actually sketch directly in with Photoshop, and so you don't do like a pencil sketches before.
No.
Okay. And do you have something else which simplifies your life? Maybe some tool like a printer or some other software which you bought recently?
I have a printer here, but it doesn't work. For some reason, I don't know, it stopped working like for a few months. So I don't use it. I don't know. No, actually, I'm kind of I have really simple setup here. I don't have any Cintiq even. I have my old Intel's vacuum Intel's tablet, and I have Photoshop and stylus and no, nothing.
So how long does the normal illustration, like on average, take you?
Well, I used to like 5 years ago. It was around 6 hours, but today I'm trying to implement and squeeze in as many details as possible. Once again, I'm working on my style, so I'm trying to make it more complex and more elaborate.
Yeah.
So in most cases, it's 8 to 12 hours of work, like 3 days of work. Each day around 4 or 5 hours.
And when we talked about the projects before, how do you do your networking, or how do you find new paid projects?
I don't find them; they find me. Well, actually, I don't know. I don't have any luck with finding jobs like by myself. I try to approach different studios, and I've tried to approach different clients, and I wrote them a lot of emails, and they never replied me. But some people still contact me almost every day. They're looking for illustrators, so to do some jobs. So I don't care. Okay, those guys they didn't reply. No problem with that. So I kind of stopped. Like a few years ago, I stopped looking for jobs because I gave up. I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but they seem to ignore me completely. All those guys that I wanted to work with, but and still I do have projects to work on.
So where do they find you now? Like, is it?
I believe they find me via my website, Facebook page, though recently Facebook kind of dead. I don't know, for some reason. It's really slow, moving really slow, and almost no feedbacks I receive from there.
Yeah, they changed the algorithm. So
they changed something, and it's just awful. And Instagram, I switched to Instagram. I started, to post almost every day on Instagram, and it kind of, pays back. People contact me, and people find me somehow. You found me somehow.
Yeah, it was Instagram as well.
Yeah, you see, and I love Instagram especially because it's out of politics. You don't read any post about politics.
And fights in comments and stuff.
Yeah, just images, just beautiful pictures, and that's amazing. That's what I need. I press like to everybody because I like them all.
That's true. I do the same because I just like everything, and you're like, yeah, everything is so pretty.
Cool. Oh, that is great. Yeah, cool.
And what about something you wish you knew before you started the whole art career?
Probably I wish I knew that I had to focus on something special, like on some field, because right now, for example, right now my whole career is spread over a few fields. I do advertising illustration, I do children's books, I do editorial, I do character design for animation, movies, I do illustration for games, which is kind of, it's a lot. It gives me a lot of perspective on the illustration business as a whole. But probably if I was like 10 years younger, I would pick my one field and like put all the effort into one direction that would be more profitable and more more effective. So especially, when we're talking about all those 3D animations and 3D the modeling packages that I learned back then, I don't need them right now.
Yeah.
So I wish I wish I knew that I won't need all that all that knowledge around it, and I wish I would I wish I focused on few things, maybe fewer things, but more
In depth.
with more in depth.
And so what do you live from now? Do you have one main income from, I don't know, commissions, or is it like courses, or how do you combine maybe your income streams?
I used to teach online, and it was probably the best source of income I have ever had, because I received a lot of I received percentage from each student, and it was 70% from each student, and it was huge amount of money. And at some point I realized that this money spoils me, because it sounds weird, but I realize that I don't have that urge to draw, because I know that I can sit on my couch and do like homework critiques and do some Q&A session, and I've made my paycheck for this month. And I realize that it spoils me, that money can spoil you. And I also realized that being a teacher, well, at least in my case, it kind of makes you a god, It makes you a guru, in term for your students. But I believe that artists need to be much less self-confident, you need to always you need to be shy. You need to always to try to achieve more.
So you want to learn and create more. So you want to be better.
You need to learn. And if you call yourself a guru, if you call yourself artistic god, so you don't need it.
You don't stagnate.
You just sit in one spot and you don't move. So I stopped teaching. So now illustration and character design is my main source of my main and only source of income. Sometimes I receive some payments from Skillshare, where I posted few lessons, but I also do sometimes, but it's more to get my head clean. I also do lectures. So, for example, the people invite me to do some workshop or lectures abroad. So they pay me for my for my time and for the flight. And that is really tiny income. It's not a big source. It's a few times a year. But my main and only source is my work, and that is basically that I wanted, always wanted.
That's perfect, yeah. And when you were teaching, did you taught also through Skillshare, or was it different platform? Or
no, it was
physical?
kind of it was like private school of my friend, and I was teaching. I was teaching with. It was like. Online teaching, so I had a class with people that I gave them critique and so on. And I used to teach for like 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, that's a long time. Yeah.
It was good. Yeah, it was a good experience, but I'm happy that it stopped.
So it's nothing else.
Yeah, I'm not a teacher anymore. I'm humble. I'm not a guru. I'm just drawing my stuff, and that is
so
all.
You want to learn more and everything. Perfect.
Yes, of course.
And if you can maybe share also what was like the most difficult time, or kind of the worst moment of your art career, and what you learned from it, like kind of the key takeaway.
Yeah. I used to work maybe 7 years ago. I used to work with some illustration agency, from United Kingdom, from UK. And I signed some back then. We used to sign some exclusivity papers, like some agreements that I could only work with them and not working on the site. And I was I was fair with them. I worked with them for 2 years, and they gave me only projects where I had to imitate some other people's styles. So for 2 years, I created 10, maybe 15 projects, relatively big projects, illustrations and series of illustrations that I cannot show. I cannot post it online because it is not mine. It has nothing to do with me. And eventually I left them. But I spent 2 years. I wasted 2 years working with people who didn't actually. They didn't want to promote me to let me improve my style, to use my style.
To use you to full potential.
Yeah, they wanted me to do really technical stuff, and imitate some people's stuff, and it was awful. And the illustrations were horrible, just horrible. I created horrible illustrations for 2 years. So the main lesson that I learned from that 2 years of failure, that was right now for me, my portfolio is the most important thing. So if I choose a project, it's only because of my portfolio, because I choose it from the perspective of my portfolio. I needed to contribute to my portfolio, to push it up and forward, and not to do stuff that I've done before, or that is not my style, or whatever. Only something that is pushing me forward.
Definitely, yeah. And let's talk about future. And I have 2 last questions. So in 5 to 10 years, what would be your dream scenario? And also, what would you like to be remembered for in 100 years?
Well, pretty much that's more or less one answer to these 2 questions. I would like to illustrate books, children's books. I've done it a few times, but I'm still I feel that I'm still not ready yet. I feel that I still need to learn more, and I'm preparing myself to that. It's my holy grail, my huge mission, my big mission, to illustrate classic fairy tales like Alice in Wonderland or the Nutcracker, or classic ones, with a lot of detail, with a lot of with really not only for children, but also for grown-ups. So I feel that I'm kind of getting close to that, to that goal. So maybe in a year or 2 I'll be able to do it. And that is more or less that I would like to do in 5 or 10 years. And that is more or less that I would like to be remembered for, that guy that illustrated Alice in Wonderland, that is the guy.
Do you also want to write your stories?
Of course. I have my yes, of course. I have my story. I have a couple of stories in my personal stories in development, but maybe it will take some time.
Oh, nice. And before we say goodbye and finish, maybe you can share some last advice or key takeaway, and then we will say goodbye.
I don't know. I always used to tell my student that technique is not important. I sincerely believe that the only thing that is important about illustration is storytelling. the way that you deliver a message, the way that you tell your story. So technique, it's so irrelevant here. So you basically can, if you can draw with your finger, and with only one finger, or I don't know, and then if you can draw with your leg, and you can tell a story with it, so you, as an illustrator, you are perfect. So I believe that the new generation, especially new generation, if you look around the web, you can see a lot of huge amount of illustrations, the so-called illustration. People call themselves illustrators, but they cannot deliver, they cannot tell stories. They just paint beautiful images like, I don't know, robots, beautiful girls, dragons, I don't know what else, monsters or superheroes. But you see that image, it's beautifully done, it's great technique, but there is no story behind it. You cannot read it. You cannot enjoy that story. I call it, the story 1 second before. When you illustrate something, you see a frame of a story. A frame. So what I suggested to my students, they should create that frame that way that your audience would be able to imagine what happened before that frame and that what would happen after that frame. So you kind of give that, that little keyhole, into the bigger world. So you create one frame, but you tell much more about this world in one frame. And I believe that is the essence of illustration. So if I could give one advice to any illustrator, and yes, young illustrator, of course, that would concentrate on storytelling, not technique, not brushes, not Photoshop, I don't know, layers, blending modes, and so on, tutorials, and so on. Only storytelling, because if you are a good storyteller, nothing else matters. Your technique is irrelevant.
That's true.
That is my word to my message to the world.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
So let's all work on stories, and let's inspire each other also with stories. And thank you so much for being here. It was so much fun.
Thank you very much.
And thanks everyone for joining, and see you in the next episode.
Bye bye.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know in comments. Also, please subscribe to my channel for more videos, because I post new interview every single workday. You can also find the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a little freebie waiting for you, so go check it out. If you want to listen to the interviews on the go, make sure to check out the podcast episodes at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and don't forget to inspire each other. I will see you guys in the next episode.